Hello, friends and beautiful people. It is Kathryn. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this chat, this discussion. Hi, hi, hi. Today we're talking about 4 ways to create self-nourishment and self-support now. This is something you definitely want to watch. Hi, Eleanor! Because this has a special offer and announcement attached to it that's pretty darn cool, and I'm very excited to share it. Let's see, I'm going to share to a couple groups here, so pardon me as I do that. And my phone is blowing up today. It's very dark here. It's very dark, and it is snowing. Winter is upon us. Winter is here. So I'm gonna post in a couple groups. Excuse me a moment while I do that, but say hello. If you're watching the replay later, hashtag replay. Great to see you, Eleanor. Hi, Eric Anderson. It's been a minute. Hello, hello. And anyone who's joining, let me know where you're watching from. Is it snowing where you are? In my hometown, even though I haven't lived there in many, many years, of Buffalo, New York, it was 72 degrees yesterday and it's snowing here. So what is going on in the world with the weather? Okay, there we go. I'm in that group. So I'm really excited to chat with you today about this because this was the topic for a ladies' luncheon that I delivered a speech, a talk, chat discussion for on Friday, and it was so well received, and I really enjoyed it. So I think that the ladies enjoyed it as well, who I delivered the speech to, and I wanted to share it with all of you. We are totally snowed in. This is my current mode. I know. It's not going to stick for us yet. But it is quite cold, and it's very snowy. It's happening. And you've got crazy rain there in Oregon, Sarah. Yeah. So I've got a lot going on today. It's a busy Monday. My doggy, I'm waiting to hear from the vet. He's getting his teeth pulled. Poor baby. His back teeth, deep-rooted tooth extraction. So fingers crossed for my doggy Finn. If you know me, you watch me, you're a fan of maybe not just me, but of Finn as well, because he's featured in so much of my Facebook land life. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this today because it is all about self-nourishment and self-support. And, when we feel like, we talk about the weather and we say, oh my God, it's not sunny out, so I'm gonna feel like crap today. Or it's snowing, I'm gonna feel like crap today. And you can do that. But we have a tendency to, thank you, Sarah. Hugs to Vinny, thank you. We do have a tendency to look at the world outside of us and then let that dictate how we feel. And I know for a fact, not just believe, I know for a fact that we have sovereign choice of will. We get to decide. We get to choose how we want to feel. And we can either let external stimuli dictate to us how that's going to be, or we can decide for ourselves that I choose to be in the end result of. That's kind of my mantra. I choose to be in the energy of. I'm excited to be feeling this or being engaged in that. It's not so much about saying, I'm not available for this and I'm not available for that. It's only getting you halfway there. We're all really good at knowing what we don't want, right? But the thing is that we don't realize we also hold the power to really know and embrace what we do want, how we want to feel, how we choose to feel. It's our decision. We get to decide. And so often we forget that. And we are coming off of, a 3-year timeline merge, if you want to call it that, or a culmination of 3 planetary timelines. Hello, gorgeous Angela in Austria. It's probably snowing there too. We are coming off of this, or coming into, I should say, this wrap up and this culmination. You're already feeling it. You're already feeling it. The reason why we feel so emotional is because we are wrapping up 3 really profound planetary timelines as we close out 2022. We're wrapping up 2020. We're wrapping up 2021. We're wrapping up 2022. So think of it as you are also wrapping up all the feels from that 3-year merge and marriage of those 3 really powerful planetary timelines. That's a lot. It's a lot to filter. It's a lot to put on your nervous system. It's a lot to be able to grapple with on a daily basis, on top of what's happening in your life now, right? So for those of you who are really feeling super emotional, sure, we've got an eclipse coming. Sure, we've got planetary involvement, as above, so below. All those things are true as well. But we are going through this very profound culmination period of every year. The end of every year brings that. But this year is very auspicious and very special because it's wrapping up 3 big planetary timelines. No snow down here yet. Okay. All right. When are you coming out here, lady? They let me go to Canada now, so I'm coming up to see you in BC whenever you land up there, Angela. So if you're feeling really emotional, if you're feeling really put upon by these energies, really maybe going towards the victimization of it and feeling like, oh, poor me, someone just come and rescue me. Calgon, take me away. Those of you who are of my age group, you get that reference. And it's exhausting, right, Angela? It's exhausting. We feel like we're burnt out. We've been feeling like we've been burning the candle at both ends for a long time now. We're trying to juggle just daily life, but we're also juggling and grappling with a pretty massive life review from these last 3 years. We're taking a look and we're taking a hard inventory and exploration. Maybe some of us who are a little more into the shadow work doing it more than others. But whether you're consciously exploring this or unconsciously exploring it, you are feeling all the feels. That's kind of the baseline for everyone, right? And it takes a lot. It takes a lot. Sarah says, I keep reminding myself to speak my dreams into action like you always tell us. It's working. The energy feels like it's moving along. And we got to keep at it, right? We have to keep at it. So with all of this happening, we get to say, all right, I'm going to allow myself to be blown about like a leaf on the wind as a result of these energies. Or I get to be the sovereign agent. I get to be my own inner authority. I decide. I choose to be in the end result of. Okay? So those of you who are watching me here, and maybe you have not seen me before, I'm going to be posting this in a lot of places. It's going to be on my YouTube channel. It's going to go out to my email list. It's going to be here on replay on my personal page. It's going to my Kathryn Myself 5D Visionary page. It's going to my Divine Disruptor page. It's going into a few, maybe more of my groups. But those of you who are new to my world and are just becoming part of my orbit, so I'm an elevated consciousness coach. And I've been doing energy healing. I've been an author and now a speaker, doing more public gigs, and I really like that. I've worn many hats in the world of spiritual personal evolution, author, mentor, course creator. But as an elevated consciousness coach, in my work, I'm always addressing the holistic nature of people, of our human experience. And so when I am addressing my clients and their human experience of evolution, I address the 4-body system. So that's the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. We are not one without the other. No parts of self exist in a closed system or a vacuum. We are an open system. Everything contributes to everything else. right? This is not just true of our particular energy field, but the entire energy field, the unifying mind, the all that is, right? The tapestry that unites us all as source, all right? So in all that I teach and share, I'm always addressing this four-body system. We're an open system. So no part of us, no energy exists in a vacuum. Everything contributes to everything else. And so when the goal is healing, another way to say this, the goal is also growth. Because nothing exists apart from its polar opposite. They're just two expressions of the same energy, really. So when we're talking about healing in my world, we're talking about growth. And when we're talking about growth, we're also talking about healing. Okay? One does not exist without the other. Okay? And we can't try to put these in a vacuum and then supersize it and hope that it branches out and affects everything else. We have to look at everything as like this pulled back lens and seeing all the puzzle pieces and how they fit together, how they work together. And that's how I work. Okay? And so when I do this, when I have been doing this all year long, coming off of a pretty sweeping and tumultuous healing experience of my own, what I call a spiritual rock bottom. It was not just a dark night of the soul, it was a spiritual rock bottom. So Tiziana, maybe you can appreciate that, who is saying that today was very heavy for me. My heart goes to you. I know what that feels like. I know. So my work scans the spectrum of the sometimes very, very spiritual, esoteric, sometimes really nebulous concepts. Those of you who've been in my orbit for a while, you know that I am a teacher who stretches you. I tend to talk about sometimes very esoteric things, but I always kind of bring them down into a very grounded and tangible level, practical, so that you can access them where you're at. And I teach and I share to a variety of people. And so I really give myself a pat on the back for being able to take some really out there concepts sometimes and then being able to kind of anchor them in your reality so that it works for you, so that you can make sense of it. I know I can make sense of it, but what good am I as a teacher or someone who shares this knowledge if I can't help you to make sense of it, right? So we have to understand that there's room for all the expressions, there's room for all the feels, and we're going to feel it all. And this is only going to ramp up. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, or even offer some bullshit prognostication. Take it or leave it, and as I always invite you to do, take what resonates with you and leave the rest. But 2023, although it's going to be very expansive, it's going to be challenging because, as I mentioned before, growth, and many of you are going to experience growth, you're experiencing it right now. You may be in the throes of it right now. It always comes with healing. Those things always coexist, right? When we come off of a profound healing experience, we've created room and space for growth, right? And anytime we are anchoring into greater growth, that means something has got to give way in our field. So that's why those two things always exist together, yes? And so we've got room, we really do, even though some days it doesn't feel that way. We have room to experience it all, to feel it all. And I invite you to. Suppress nothing. Push nothing away. Because this is what creates emotional tension. And emotional tension is stress. And emotional tension is when you try to push something away that is coming up because it is your soul self saying, hey, sister, this is what is hobbling your growth. Are you ready to give it up? Are you ready to untether yourself? Are you ready to release yourself from this burden? And so when we push it away, we just prolong a healing experience that is imminent anyway, right? Because that's how much the universe loves you. It doesn't give up on you. That's how much your soul is invested in your growth, because growth is your destiny. And our human destiny is an emotional destiny. We came here to feel it all. The 3D experience is a very unique playground. It's one of the most profound mystery schools, actually, 3D Earth. because there is so much contrast and polarity and duality, and we're learning to untangle a lot of that for ourselves and kind of transcend this. But as long as we're in 3D, we're going to have duality and contrast, because that is what defines the energetics of 3D. But it was something we're always meant to play with, not be undone by, okay? But that is always something that comes down to your choice. And you're being presented with healing opportunities all the time now. So when you think that you are being put upon, the world is making me feel this, the world is making me feel that, you're allowing yourself to be blown about like a leaf on the wind, saying all the problems exist outside of you, when really the issue is that you're being invited to respond a different way to life. And when we habitually respond the same way to life over and over and over again, you stay in a consciousness loop. You remain in the duality. You languish in the contrast. You kind of take up residence there. We were never meant to take up residence in the contrast. It's meant to be a learning experience that we evolve out of. And we are elevating to a higher frequency. Whether we like it or not, we really don't have control over it, because Mothership Earth has already evolved to a higher frequency hub. And we are of her, she is of us. So we go along on that ride. And for some of us, it's going to be harder because they won't realize that it's an invitation to evolve. And for some of us who are more savvy, but we're just stubborn, we're like, nah, not this week. And the universe says, okay, we'll come back at you next week. We're not going to give up on you, because you're meant to evolve. You're being invited to grow. You're being invited to move to that next frequency hub of awareness of you, that next higher expression of you. And so to the degree that you feel the harshness, the intensity of these emotions is directly correlated to the degree that you're trying to push them away, or pretend it's not you, or say that it's a problem that exists in the world. Well, I have some news for you. There is no experience that exists outside of you. Not really. You can say that this is happening in the world and that's happening in the world, and all the incendiary politics that are ramping up before the election midterms and all this other shit. But really, at the end of the day, you are the only filter of all of that. No one is stubborn here. I'm probably the most stubborn, by the way. I'm probably the most stubborn. I'm a total rebel, and I'm a Capricorn. So I don't like authority. I like to do my own thing all the time, always been. And even when I know what's good for me, I tend to not do it, because I'm like, no, there's another way. No, there really isn't. You have to deal with the shadow. So it really comes down to, you can deal with these emotions. You can find those gifts in the garbage, I call them, that when we do the shadow work, the great reward is the lesson. And that's the key piece, because that's what gives us the kind of release, the key to our release that says you don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to stay in this consciousness loop, right? Sorry, I need some water. So you always hold the key to your release. And we're going to go through some more bouts of this ebb and flow, where we feel maybe really elated one day and really passionate and purposeful and driven one day. The flow days, I call them. And then those days where we feel really hard done by the world, where everything's going to shit, and those are the ebb days. And those ebb days will always present us with an emotional tension. And again, the emotional tension is not being able to sit with those things that are coming up. And we often, and I've been doing this work for 20 plus years, so you're going to have to take my word on this. When we feel we can't tackle those heavier emotions, it's because we're not in a place of feeling deeply supported. Let me put it to you this way. If you felt really nourished and nurtured and incredibly supported by yourself, for yourself, okay? Because that's what we're talking about here. I'm not talking about looking to external things to give you a sense of safety or security, because those things are fleeting. They are never lasting, and we can never outsource our sense of safety and security and hope that that lasts, because then we're allowing to dictate all the events of the world to allow us to feel safe or secure. It has to be an inwardly sourced sense of support and nourishment. So when you're feeling really supported and nourished, you have everything that you need. You feel cozy and at home with yourself. You feel a profound sense of self-love. And for you out there who maybe doesn't feel that way, what if you did? What if you did feel that way? Don't you think that when those rocky emotions did come up, you'd feel like, you know what? It's crazy that this is happening, but I know who I am. I know how strong I am. I've been presented with situations like this before, and I rose up like a phoenix out of the ashes sometimes. I met the challenge with great poise and courage. And if I've done it before, I mean, fuck, I'm still standing. I'm still drawing breath. I've definitely done it before. It's taken you some modicum of strength and resilience to get to where you are right now, yes? So if you've done it before, you can do it again. You have done it before, and you will do it again. Okay? And when you're in that place, don't you feel like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath, but I totally got this. And I know that once I go into this energy and see it for what it is, sometimes this big bad boogeyman, the way I have it built up in my head, is actually not this big bad boogeyman or big bad wolf at my door. Sometimes it's a tiny chihuahua. Once I really look at it and can see it for what it is and allow myself to be present and interface with this fear, this challenge, this issue, or whatever, a lot of times it's smaller than I think it is, because we build things up in our mind. It's part of our cognitive bias. It's part of our negative bias. It's what the ego creates. The ego creates all the big bad boogeymen, right? And so how much are you listening to that level of you to say, you can't possibly get through this problem. Keep pushing it away. Pretend it doesn't exist. Ignore it. Eventually it'll just go away. It never does. It never does. And then there's the soul self, your higher self-expression, your God self, whatever you want to call it. It's going, you totally got this. You totally got it. You think you don't, but you totally got it. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. You're going to be okay. Even if you think it's not going to be okay, you're still going to be okay. And those of you who are reaching for greater self-love and you are really stretching yourself to maybe give yourself greater levels of support and nourishment right now, maybe you don't feel that way just yet, but you can. You can. In the work that I do, I have people come to me who are in a real rock and a hard place. And sometimes we talk for a half hour and we get it sorted. And they end up remembering, not because I solve their problems, but because I'm very good at helping people remember who the fuck they are and how powerful they are. And then the big bad boogeyman that lives in their head, it's not as big as they think it is, right? I want to read some of the comments here. So do you hold space when the emotional tension is there? Yes. Yes. Holding space for yourself with emotional tension. The emotional tension occurs because something comes up begging for your attention, some shadow part of self, a fragment of you, maybe a part of you that you've pushed away many, many times before. Maybe it's a part of yourself that you can't forgive yourself for. Maybe it's a part of yourself you identify you can't forgive other people for something. Maybe it's where you feel like you failed at something, or you're not adept at something. You're not worthy, or you are, impoverished in consciousness. And that usually means we are impoverished in our financial state as well. Or we feel that we're invisible. We feel we're unwanted. These things come up. They're going to come up more and more and more. Anything that's been a pervasive theme in your life is not just going to go away and dissipate into 5D. You can't take this shit with you. Your karmic ties, your ancestral knots, your ancestral legacies that are aligned with lack. You can't take that with you. That is baggage that is not accepted. You know, when you go to the airport, or maybe when you used to go to the airport and you'd have a carry-on bag and you fit it in this little thing. It says, hey, if your bag doesn't fit in this thing, you can't take it on the flight with you. That's kind of like 5D. And even like 6D and beyond. If that baggage does not fit in that container of 5D, it ain't going. We've all got a lot of baggage. Oversized baggage and carry-ons, right? So the emotional tension is being able to sit vigil with it and say, okay, I see you. Sometimes this can take 5 minutes. That's where we get it all crazy in our head. You know, we think of this big bad boogeyman and we think like, it's gonna take me weeks and months. Well, here's what I can tell you from my own experience. It took me weeks and months to go through the spiritual rock bottom because I wasn't willing to be with a lot of the emotional tension. Some of it I was, and some of it I was straight up in denial about. I'm like, this can't possibly be me. I've been doing this work for 20 years. I teach about this stuff. I already know, blah, 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 blah. Hello, spiritual ego. And the reason why this spiritual rock bottom lasted for months and months is because I wasn't allowing myself to be with and sit vigil with what was coming up for me to see. Sometimes plain as day, but I was still like, nope, no time for that. I got shit to do. And so what could have taken me a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, ended up taking months because of where I wasn't allowing myself to be with the emotional tension. The emotional tension is allowing yourself to just sit with it. Sit with it. What is this telling me? And it's not that on those ebb days, I call them, when the shadow comes up and it's right in your face, it's not that this part of self is trying to hurt you. That is never the case, because often this part of you has functioned as your guardian angel. This part of you has been a protectress or protector, helping you through some pretty gnarly shit in your life. It's a part of you. That's the other thing. You can't ever not be you. And so when we try to push away at these parts of self, it's like saying, I push away me. Well, your body is paying attention to that. Your cells are paying attention to that. Your DNA is paying attention to that and saying, well, then you're rejecting yourself. And your DNA is like, well, if we don't have you, what do we have? Your cells are like, well, if we don't have you, what do we have? And so it's constantly, finding or trying to find a way back home. It's called shadow because it lives beyond the light of your wholeness. It lives beyond the light of your love. And just as you had the power to push it away or think you could push it away or fragment it or fracture yourself in order to dismiss this part of you before, it's that same energy of being able to say, okay, this is just a different part of me now that's now calling you home. It's the part of me that's lived through enough life experience, enough hard-won wisdom to say, I don't have to fracture myself anymore. I don't have to fragment myself anymore. And to think that I can't even push these parts of myself away is illusory, because you can't ever really do that. It's a hallucination, because you can't ever really push parts away of yourself at all, because you can't not be you. Does that make sense? Does that land? So really, ultimately, it's a game you're playing with yourself. I feel like I'm seeking for an answer that does not serve when I'm in that space. And that's the big part of it, is that it is the ego that tries to be clever and tries to strategize, and that's the part of you that seeks. When you allow yourself to be in the emotional tension and you can just be in the presence, you can be in the stillness. A lot of us, and I see a lot of fear in the collective of people unwilling to be in the silence. Even when I'm out in nature, and this is dumping outside right now. Even when I'm out in nature, I encounter people who have to have, when I walk my dog every day, this beautiful Whatcom Falls Park. Sarah knows it. She's been there. I walk my dog there every single day. It's peaceful. It's beautiful. There's waterfalls. There's streams. There's trees. There's pines. There's deciduous trees. It's incredible. And I think, my God, what a beautiful place I live in. And doesn't everybody else think so too? And then I see people who are either playing music out loud in the park, which drives me nuts, because headphones were invented like decades ago, and I don't know why people need to do that. Or, you know, I go on hikes, and I actually gone on hikes and seen people blasting music, or everybody's got to have earbuds in and listening to something, or everybody's got to be on the phone and talking to somebody, speaking into their phone like this, which also frosts my ass to no end. When you're out in a place, I go out to eat by myself a lot. I have no problem with it. I actually kind of like it. And, you know, it's tempting to want to be on the phone all the time because we all are attached to our phones so much at this point. And then I'll see myself in a cafe or a restaurant, other people dining alone, but they have to be doing something. Instead of, you know, speaking to someone right in front of them, or even people going out to dinner together and they have to be on the phones, or, but I see a lot of people who just cannot be in the silence. They just can't be in that space. And there's a lot of, I think, fear from people who think what they're going to find there. And it's going to be something that they can't handle. And that's never the case, because we're going back to the same issue again. How can you not handle you? That's like saying, if I go into the silence, if I go into the stillness, if I sit with the emotional tension, I'm going to see something that I can't heal, that I can't handle, I can't be with. How can you not handle you? That doesn't make any sense, you know? So of course, it's something that it's meant for you. It's a part of you. How can you not handle that, right? And we also, you know another truth, that is the universe will never give you anything you can't handle. So there really isn't anything to fear. You're just putting off the inevitable. We're not willing to sit with the emotional tension. And the beautiful part of sitting with the emotional tension is that when you sit vigil with the shadow, you're able to sit with those moments where you feel hard done by. What is the emotion? What is the lesson? Why am I seeing this again? Why am I going through this experience with this person again? Why does this theme keep popping up in my life with maybe different role players every time, but it's a familiar theme. There's a common denominator there. Why does this keep coming up? What is the lesson? Soul self, God self, what do you want me to see? I'm open. I'm ready to receive it. And when you make that declaration, again, this is sovereign choice, sovereign will at work. When you ask, you will receive. That's true of, I want to glean this gift in the garbage for once and for all because I want to be done with this consciousness loop. I want to nullify this timeline. God self, show me how to do it. You'll be given the information. But it's when we try to seek, you're working with the energy of ego to seek something that comes from your soul self. Those energies are counterproductive and they kind of cancel each other out. Not entirely. It'll just take you a longer period of feeling like you're seeking. Because you can find things that way, but it takes a lot longer and it's much more frustrating and exhausting. I absolutely love dining alone too, Jante. So when we can let ourselves be with the emotional tension, it's saying also, I can handle this. Look at what else I've handled like a boss. Look at what else I've been through and have overcome. Look at all the levels of adversity I've faced, and here I still am. So whatever this is, it's okay. It's a part of me anyway. Of course, if it's a part of me, I can handle it. It's for me. It's for the betterment of me. This healing is for the growth of me. This healing contributes to the growth of me. Of course I've got it. Of course I've got it. But sometimes we need a little help reminding ourselves of that, right? So when we have a sense of greater self-support, when we feel really nourished, we tend to have this mindset, we tend to have this attitude of, it might suck for a minute, it might sting a little bit, but it's for my own growth, and I'll be okay. I'll be okay. And if we don't feel really supported and nourished, chances are we don't have that level of mind to be able to say that to ourselves, right? Let it be revealed rather than seeking. Excellent. Perfectly said, Crystal. Thank you. So does that that land with you? Does that resonate? That if you have this sense of greater self-support, greater self-nourishment, meaning you are the source of it. It is inwardly sourced by what you know to be true about yourself. And I'm talking about what you believe to be true about yourself, because belief isn't going to be really sufficient. It's got to be a knowing. It's got to be a knowing. Beliefs change like the wind. Knowing is eternal. So when we have this knowing, like, you know, I'm going to get through this. It's going to allow me to see the bigger picture of myself. It's going to allow me to grow. It's only going to lend to more growth. And the more I do this, the more I get in the habit of being with this shadow, allowing for this period of release, and then the renewal comes in, and then the release, and then the renewal. And we go into this beautiful kind of rhythm. We develop this kind of cadence with it. And we become more fearless when the shadow comes up. Instead of something that's pushed away, we end up feeling like, ooh, there's some healing coming around. That means I'm going to grow. That means I'm going to expand. That means I'm going to renew. That means I'm going to be able to create my reality from an elevated expression of me. Then, dare I say, we can even get a little excited about it. We can have a sense of curiosity, which always brings neutrality. So when we're in that place of something coming up and we automatically feel fear, one way of supporting yourself in that moment is to be curious, because curiosity neutralizes fear. It just does. So when something comes up and it feels like, ooh, this could be big, and maybe this is like an iceberg where I can kind of see the surface of it, but it goes really deep. Shit. Okay. How can you instead be curious? How can you instead be curious? And say, all right, this is going to teach me something. This is going to allow me to grow somehow. Wonder what that could be. Start right there. Start right there. How can you gain that sense of trust to be safe? I'm going to talk about that in here, Tiziana. Okay. So let's go into the 4 ways that you can instill self-support and self-nourishment now. Because do you want to be blown about like a leaf on the wind based on world events? Because we're not done with upheaval. We are not done with the sea change that comes with the rising frequency of an entire planet. We are not done with the collapsing and the dissolving of structures and paradigms that were built on the old earth structures of lack and matrix of lack. We're not done with that. We're going through, and we're going to continue to go through, a profound process of dismantling. So, do you want to let all of that outside of you, or what you perceive to be outside of you, allow that to be what dictates how you're going to feel? And so that over and over again with each new upheaval, and there's going to be many, we're not done, that you'll allow yourself to be put upon, be victimized, feel like you need rescuing from something again outside of you. I don't want to feel that way. I never want to feel that way. And it sucks. It's exhausting, and it's unnecessary. Okay? So let's talk about these 4 ways to instill some deep self-support and self-nourishment now. Okay? So if we don't feel safe, if we don't feel nourished, if we don't feel supported because of external stimuli, things happening outside of us, then you are outsourcing those feelings of safety. You are outsourcing feelings of trust. You're allowing something outside of you to allow you to feel trust, to allow you to feel safety, security, stability. You're outsourcing all of these ways of being to world events and experiences that happen outside of you and are beyond your control. And you can't hope to control these experiences. You can't hope to control world events, but you can always be the sovereign agent of your own energy and how you respond. That is your power. It always and ever has been. We forget. We have a collective amnesia about how powerful we are, okay? So how do you decide and choose to feel deeply supported and deeply nourished, which lends to self-trust, but I have something I'm going to say about that. How do you allow yourself that no matter what? No matter what. I'm going to feel like I am my own greatest lifeline of support, that I am my own rescue, no matter what. How do we get there? All right. First off, presence and breath. And this is one category in two parts. Presence and breath. When we allow ourselves to be present, we can see the truth of any situation. It's when we don't allow ourselves to be in the stillness, we don't allow ourselves to be in the silence, in the place of accepting what is. I'm not saying that you have to, give it a green check and say, this is okay, because shit happens, it's not okay. But I'm talking about accepting what is as I'm willing to be present and see the truth of this is what's going on at the moment. So we have to begin by accepting, and you can only begin by accepting by being in presence. And anytime you want to be into presence, you want to drop anchor in the now. Use the breath. I don't care who you are on this planet. I don't care if you have no training in energy healing. I don't care if you're new to all of this stuff and what you might call woo-woo. I never call it woo-woo, but I just did. We all have the ability to access the breath, okay? Unless you're dead. And if you're listening to me, chances are you're not dead. So we all have the ability to take a deep breath. And if you have the presence of mind to take a deep breath, you have presence. So the breath always brings you into presence, and presence always brings you in connection to the breath, right? They're two parts of the same energy. This is easily available to anyone and everyone at any given time. I don't care how gnarly your situation is that you happen to be interfacing with. You have the ability to gain presence and a perspective shift, because anytime you go into presence, you have a perspective shift. And it's like downshifting into stillness and into the now dominant timeline, but also your now dominant moment. Okay? Which is all there is. And when we are able to do that for ourselves, we're giving ourselves the gift of presence. Presence is a gift. That's why it's called the present. And with presence always comes a perspective shift. It's like we downshift from wherever we are investing too much energy in the past or too much energy in the future. And this is why we get spun out in a million different directions. When we're interfacing with something that is painful or something we feel we can't handle, there are one or two things happening. When you feel you can't handle what's happening, that your energy is funneled to something in the past where this similar thing came up before, and then you go into a re-traumatizing memory. You trigger yourself into feeling the way you did in that past experience when this similar theme came about. Or you go into the future and you start worrying about outcomes that have not even presented themselves yet. But the ego likes to step out its experience to 20 steps out and saying, well, if this thing all goes to shit now, then that's going to go to shit, and that's going to go to shit, and then 5 weeks from now when I have this other thing, that's going to go to shit, and then we spin out. You're not dealing with reality. You're letting the mind create disaster scenarios that don't even exist. They are unwritten. And you allow yourself, again, to be blown about by the wind, like a leaf on the wind. And you don't have to do that to yourself. So you can catch yourself in those moments when you start to get spun out. Just the breath. Still your thoughts. A lot of times I do this really special thing, and I'm going to share this with you. A lot of times I'm trying to fall asleep at night. I have a million things going on in my head. I'm a prolific creator, so I'm always creating content. I'm writing something. I'm preparing a talk, whatever, course content, you name it. And so when I'm in the stillness and trying to go to sleep at night, all these things are going on in my mind. And so I have to be able to take myself out of that loop of untethered thoughts that are all over the place. And I imagine the space between my pineal gland. So I just imagine spots inside my skull. So I imagine the pineal gland, which is just behind where the top of my glasses are here, because it's actually here. You think that it's in your brow, but it's your true third eye is right here, not here. So I just imagine my pineal gland being behind here. That's just what I do. And then I imagine my pituitary gland, which is in the back of the head and up. And then I imagine a crystalline center in between there. And when I let when my thoughts get so spun out and so crazy, I just go, stop, stop. And I imagine this crystalline point lighting up. And it brings in waves of peace. I imagine it bringing in equanimity. Equanimity is this kind of sense of having peace within and without, okay? And when I do that, I'm able to calm myself. And then I start my breathing work, and then before I know it, I'm asleep, okay? The breath always centers me, so important. Absolutely, absolutely. So this reminds you, when you adopt presence and the breath, or the breath and presence, both pretty much part of the same thing, you realize there is only now. Everything else is hallucination. There is only what is. And now is all there is. There is no past. There is no future. Not really. These are just points in time that the mind uses to compartmentalize information. They don't actually truly exist. And in terms of spiritual time or zero time, they are completely linear concepts that don't even exist in that same bandwidth of understanding zero time. Okay? All there is now. Okay? The second thing, establishing deep self-support and self-nourishment. Boundaries. Boundaries. Having strong yet flexible boundaries can be an absolute lifesaver, and it feels like a lifeline for those of us who are good at not only establishing them, but maintaining them and keeping them. This ends up feeling like a lifeline that says, you know what, no one else is in charge of my energy, right? And a lot of times, especially when I work with women who have a lot of people pleasing in their energy, or want to be the good girl, the good wife, the good mother, they don't want to play the villain ever. And in order to keep the status quo, a lot of times will just, do things they don't want to do. Or if they are approval seeking, it can be really difficult to establish boundaries because we have this kind of misperception about boundaries, that it's keeping other people out. No. The truth about strong yet flexible boundaries is that you've worked really hard to become who you are. And you get to keep all that good energy in. You get to hold on to that. You don't have to compromise any of it. So strong and flexible boundaries is about keeping that energy in and not allowing anyone else to disturb that level of peace. Because when you really think about it, and you're able to pat yourself on the back for the shadow work you've engaged with before, the things that you've done to get yourself here, if you can celebrate that enough and give yourself a pat on the back, you worked hard to do that, didn't you? You worked hard to get here and be who you are and be where you are. Why would you let anyone else have power over that, to disturb that equanimity? Okay? Yes, it is tougher for those of us who play the game of, the good girl. It is tougher for those of us who are approval seeking, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just might take a little more practice. And what does strong yet flexible boundaries look like? That you have some principles around, I am unfuckable with in these particular things. And it could be your time, it could be your energy, that you are like, I am unfuckable with and I'm unavailable for any concession underneath this. This is my bare minimum of what I allow, period, the end, okay? But sometimes we can be, a little more open with people. Like, I have strong yet flexible boundaries in my business and how I work with my clients. I will offer deadlines and, here's the time to get this discount or these savings, or these are my prices on my programs. And those are boundaries for me because it's taken me a long time to get where I am and to cultivate the amount of knowledge and learning and wisdom and all that, and package it and offer it so that it is accessible to people in my community. And I own the value of that entirely. But I also understand that, we're living in very different and trying times. And so I can be flexible with deadlines here and there. And especially when I have clients who have worked with me for years who really want to be involved in something else I'm offering, and the payment plan doesn't work for them. I'll be like, okay, how do we make this work? Because when it comes down to the flexibility of your boundaries, the flexibility will always come down to, well, what are my core values? What are my core principles? And my core value is I want to really, truly be of service. It's really, it is so important to me. And I hold it in such integrity to be available for others' healings and growth. And to assist in, any way that I can to give people the absolute best of what I've got in order to be able to do that. And sometimes, because my bullshit detector is pretty strong, I can see where people are just trying to get a deal or a discount out of me. And I'm like, yeah, we don't do that. So that's a strong boundary. But when I know people are there for growth and evolution over time and want to work with me over time or have worked with me over time, of course I'm going to work with that person, right? So strong yet flexible boundaries have a lot to do with, well, what are my values? How much do I value my time, my energy, my learning, my business, all of those things? It's having boundaries is an opportunity for you to get clear on, what does your life mean to you? What is your time, your energy, your level of communication? What you're willing to be able to do for others? What are your hard and fast rules around that? And where does it, feel like maybe a slippery slope? And that there's room for different interpretations. So you have to get clear on that. And understanding something else really powerful about boundaries. When we don't have boundaries, when we don't adopt and are clear ourselves about strong yet flexible boundaries, how do we expect anyone else to? And if we're wide open for someone else and we just kind of let them dictate how we're going to react or respond, understand every time you're doing that, you're teaching other people how to treat you, by what you tolerate. You're teaching other people how to treat you by what you tolerate. Right? And the only people that will get their feathers in a ruffle or their panties in a twist when you have strong yet flexible boundaries and you're not afraid to assert them, the only people who are going to get their panties in a twist about it are the people who have been the habitual line steppers in your life. Those are the only people who are going to get upset about it. Other people who are reasonable are going to be like, cool, that's a good idea. You know what? I've been meaning to do that too. I'm going to do that too. And you get to lead by example. And you get to lead by example, especially when you hold true to those ideals and values by asserting your boundaries, okay? Number 3, and this is really important, and this has to do with my special announcement after. Use the good days, what I call the flow days. Use the good days to build momentum on what you're creating. So the good days, and these are value judgment based because it does have to do with us labeling, like, I felt good this morning when I got up. I felt full of energy. I felt like tackling this project that I'd finally been putting off, and I made good headway on it. And then I got a phone call, and it was my insurance company. It was saying that they're gonna, credit me some money because they charged me too much the last 2 months. And then I went to the grocery store, and my absolute favorite chocolate pudding was on sale. And I was like, ooh, I'm gonna give myself a treat because I've been so good with my diet. And I'm eating gluten-free, and this pudding is gluten-free, and it's so tasty and so yummy, so I'm gonna do that. And oh yeah, I got this recipe, and I'm so excited. I'm gonna make this delicious meal for myself tonight. I'm gonna share it with my family because I love to nourish and feed my family, and that just feels really good. It allows me to be grateful, allows me to celebrate how good life is, and you're just having a good day. Use those days to build momentum on your goals, your ambitions, your desires. Because you're already in a good place. It becomes easy on those days. It becomes effortless on those days. Use those good days to build momentum on what you're creating. And you're going to have them. You absolutely are going to have them. You do have them. Okay? And when we celebrate and work with those days, we get to co-create and collaborate with the universe on our heart's desires, which the universe is always going to help you with, but you're in the energy to feel like this is really going somewhere because you end up feeling hopeful on those days, right? You end up feeling, full of optimism because things are working out. And when things work out, you're optimistic. We tend to want to get shit done on those days. We tend to be productive, not for the sake of being productive or doing busy work, but because we want to say, you know what? I'm making some strides here. I'm making some movement forward, creating some momentum around what I want to create in my life. And that always feels good. It's important to celebrate that. But use the bad days to be with the emotional tension. What are the bad days? Those are the ebb days. Those are the days where you feel like, oh, I woke up this morning and I slept, but man, I feel like I could use another 4 hours of sleep. And I have to do this thing today. I have to get on this Zoom conference call, and I have to talk to a bunch of people and give them a progress report and do all this stuff. And I gotta take my kid to the dentist. And it's always just, I hate going to the dentist's office, and the dentist always has this horrible cologne, and I don't want to smell that. You just, whatever, it's a bad day, right? And we'll just label it. I don't have to go into too much detail. You know what your good days are, and you know what your bad days are, right? Don't use those days to push through and be productive on your goals. Just don't. Now, this might run counter to some things that we've been told, but please understand, we are coming off of a hangover of creating a reality through a lens and a matrix of lack. It is lack that makes you want to push through on the days that you should not be pushing through. Okay? Tiziana, you got the right idea, my dear. I woke up so heavy and tired after crying I felt better, because that is what you do with the bad day. You allow yourself to feel it all. Allow yourself to feel it all. Bathe in it, marinate in it, languish in it. Let yourself have the bad day. Watch Steel Magnolias. Watch a stupid comedy. Watch a Will Ferrell movie. Whatever helps you to get through the feeling. I'm not saying bypass the feeling. Be with it. Name it and claim it. Some days I wake up and I just feel sad. I feel the weight of the world. And I know a lot of it is like, it's just, I'm feeling stuff in the collective, and I'm allowing myself to, filter it through me. I don't try to push that stuff away either, even when it's part of the collective, because I'm part of the collective. I'm really clear because of my own intuitive understanding and adeptness. I know when are those days that come around when it's collective stuff purging versus it's my stuff. I've gotten really good at that because I had basically 6 solid months of training with that. But I'll feel it. I'll feel it anyway. And I'll just say to myself today, I just feel sad, and everything will set me off. I'll see a 3-legged doggy when I'm walking in the park, and I'll just start crying. And I'm a Capricorn with a Pisces moon, so I am very emotional, but usually you'd never know it. So I'm extremely emotional, but I do not wear my heart on my sleeve. Let's put it that way. But I've changed that up. So even on those days where I feel that it's, whether I'm calling it out and saying this is personal, this is mine, this is my stuff, or some days where I'm just feeling sadness or anger in the collective, I let myself feel it. I let myself feel it a little bit. And I'll do something that's physical so I can allow for the release. So usually, yes, crying, but also I love kickboxing. So I might do a good kickboxing workout. But again, I'm not doing this to push it away. I'm not doing it to bypass it. I do it to help the energy release and clear. I have to name it and claim it first. But I don't use those days to try to push through my ambitions, my desires. I don't impose a bullshit deadline on myself, like I have to do this now. If I don't do this now, then blah, blah, blah. That's the ego talking. Meanwhile, your soul self is saying, you're sad, be sad. You're sad, be sad. Just be sad. Let yourself feel it all. Watch a dumbass movie, watch. If I watch The English Patient or Steel Magnolias is another one. What's another one? Fried Green Tomatoes. These are my go-tos, and I can just put them on and I can let myself cry. Out of Africa is another one. Oh my God, that one every single time. The end of that movie, it's just tears. It's just tears. The big ugly cry with the puffy eyes, the whole thing. I just let myself have it. And I let the energy be what it needs to be. I let it have its release. I let myself be unburdened of it by feeling it all. I let it just wash through me like a filter, like a sieve. And then I don't have to burden myself by holding on to it. I can let it go. And guess what happens? By being with that emotional tension, allowing myself to feel all the feels, I get to alchemize that energy into creative tension. Because energy is energy. It takes on different form. It transforms, it transmutes, but it doesn't just dissipate and go away. It turns into something else. So when you allow yourself the emotional tension, you turn it into, by proactively working with it, allowing yourself to feel all the feels, in other words, you turn that into creative tension. What's creative tension? The energy you use as fuel for creating the reality you desire. Mine is beaches. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that too. Does that make sense? Does that land with you guys? And we all are alchemizers. We're all alchemists of energy. That's what you're doing all the time. Whether you're aware of this or not, this is what you're doing all the time. So you can make a conscious connection of alchemizing this energy. And maybe that will be more of the motivation for you to sit with and be with those feels. Like once I allow myself to just feel it and let it just wash through me, let it have its expression, then I'm free. Then I'm free to use this and transform it into creative tension. I use it to be able to sit with and savor, just like I sat with and savored these feelings that were uncomfortable. I allow myself to then sit with my desires, my vision, how I really want to feel. And it allows you to be in this space of cultivating a richness and an expression of your desires that doesn't feel fleeting. It feels like really big. It feels really expansive. That's the gift of being with the emotional tension. It creates this creative tension. And the creative tension, really what that's about is it's about bringing in new ideas that weren't available to you before. Because the veil of that, harmful or hurtful emotion, at least the way you designed it to be in your mind, was in the way. Does that make sense? Yes, this weekend my hubby reminded me it's okay to just sit and relax. Just be. Well done, Jerry. It's hard to do that when I get motivated and no one else is. Yeah. So I sat down and I read, enjoyed it. Good for you. And I realized I didn't have to do everything now. You don't. That's all an illusion anyway, right? It's all an illusion anyway. And again, we're coming off of this collective hangover on this planet of being productive for productivity's sake. Not necessarily because we're working towards something wholesome, but because it's like you have to always be doing something. You got to always be involved in something. And especially, this is even more true, I imagine, if you're a parent. I don't have kids, but I see this dynamic play out with people who have parents. Like they feel they always got to be doing something, getting on their kids to do the homework, or, get out and rake the leaves, or, you have to be out doing something, enriching their lives by taking them somewhere, or maybe they have to go to a sports practice, or all the other things, right? It's a lot. It's a lot. It's okay to just put your hands on your heart and just say, whew, the way this is in my head, it's a lot. I don't want to bring this into my life. And just because it exists in our head doesn't mean it's real. We get to remind ourselves of that too. And so the panic, the anxiety of feeling that you have to do everything now and do it all now, that's something that lives in here. It doesn't necessarily live out here. It can if you allow it and you give it expression, but you can say, okay, all right, mind. All right, mental chatter, monkey mind. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. This is not reality. Your thoughts and your feelings do not express reality. It does express your experience, absolutely. But it doesn't express, they don't express the truth of reality. They express your experience. And you get to change that experience. It's malleable. It is not fixed. All right? So that was number 3. Use the good days to build momentum. Use the bad days, the ebb days, I call them, to sit with the stuff. Sit with the emotional tension. Sit with your shadow. And when you get really good at doing this, it helps to transmute emotional tension into creative tension, which we only and ever use as fuel for our desires. Okay? And when we do that, we're in that creative mode. We are manifesting when we are working positively with creative tension. We end up going into the new Earth translation or paradigm of a manifestation cycle, which is release, renew, create. This takes place, the place of be, do, and have. That's the old Earth paradigm. That's old paradigm. Be, do, have. That sounds clunky anyway, doesn't it? Be, do, have, which is the description of the manifestation cycle as it existed in 3D, in old Earth. But we get to create new paradigms. We're already doing it. A lot of this stuff is already underway. And so I invite you to start looking at the creation cycle through a fresh pair of eyes and see it as release, renew, create. Release, renew, create. It sounds incredibly more supportive, doesn't it? It sounds really fresh and open and easy, because it can be. And when you get used to that kind of momentum of being with the emotional tension, and sometimes it only takes a day, sometimes it might take a couple days. Sometimes if you're going through something, yes, very, very traumatic, it could take a couple of weeks. But if you allow yourself to feel it, be with the grief, be with the loss, be with whatever it is, you'll find that you move through it when you allow it. You move through it a lot easier and sometimes a lot faster if you just allow it. You don't have to work to let these feelings come. That's the thing. When the shadow is presenting itself, when it's knocking at your door, when you allow it, it'll show up. There's nothing you have to do, really. It'll just be there. You don't have to coax it, right? You don't have to be like, come on, let's go. Once you allow, meaning you open yourself up to the energy, everything you need to know will present itself to you. Because it's not about pushing or forcing, it is about allowing. That's true whether you are initiating a release. It's also true whether you are initiating a new creation. Because that abundance exists already. Everything you're asking for exists already. You allow it by saying, now I'm the frequency match for it. That's how we allow. Be, do, have sounds stiff and brittle. Release, renew, create sounds like loamy earth and open water. Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. All right, so number 4. And you get good at it. This release, renew, create. And you just allow. Just allow the cycle. And then when the hard stuff comes, it just feels like, oh, here it is again. It becomes very familiar to you. The cycle becomes very familiar to you. You'll know when you're in the renewal part of that cycle. You'll know when you're in the create part of that cycle. You'll know when you're in the release part of that cycle. And if you just allow them to have their rhythm, it gets easier. You become like kind of a pro at it. Okay? And that's the ultimate kind of self-support. Saying, I'm going to allow myself to feel what is here, what is present with me right now. That's you being in your sovereign authority. It's a very powerful place to be. Okay? So number 4, trust. Find ways to keep building self-trust. Because trust has everything to do with you being able to follow through with the first 3 things that I mentioned here. The presence in the breath, knowing that you can give yourself a timeout. That takes trust. Knowing that you can establish boundaries and keep them, that takes trust. It takes self-trust. And it's not about trusting others to keep them. It's about trusting yourself to keep those boundaries. Using the good days to build momentum and using the bad days to just feel it. When we trust, we feel like we can take those bad days. We can take a time out. We can mark a day off the calendar and say, you know what? I just need to feel shit today. I just need to feel shit today. I came back from my little vacation last week, and the day I came back, I had all the stuff that I was going to do, all the things, and I was like, you know what? I'm really not feeling it. I'm feeling like a lot of dense energy right now in the collective. There was some stuff happening with my family back east, and I was like, yeah, I have a lot of stuff on my calendar, and yes, I have a lot of boxes to tick today, but you know what? Fuck it. I need to take this day to feel these things. I need this day to be present with how I feel. And I'm not going to try to push through for the sake of, completing this or doing that. Commitments I had made, I had to back out of a few, and it's okay to do that. And that takes a level of trust. The trust being, if I take that time for me and I support myself, everything's going to work out even better. Because I showed up for me. I showed up in support of myself. I showed up as my own cheerleader at a time where I needed some nourishment. I needed to be seen. I needed to be witnessed. Not by anybody else. You need to be witnessed by yourself. As someone who needs a rest. A pick-me-up. A respite. A fucking breather. You have to be your own lifeline and your own rescue for yourself. You can't outsource that to anyone else. Or any other experience that makes you feel supported. Even the good experiences that show up as external events or experiences, and you say, okay, now I can feel good about myself. You got to be really careful about conflating those things. It's not the experience that makes you feel good. Not really. It can, but do you feel good about yourself as a baseline, as a foundation of who you are? Do you generally feel good about yourself? So that when those experiences happen, you only feel that much better. You only get to celebrate more. You only get to use that as like fuel or momentum to build out your desires and the next expression of them, the next evolution of them. But it's not the event or experience outside of you that makes you feel good. It just adds to how you're feeling about yourself already. It has to. Because it's really dangerous and we can get lost really quickly if we feel like the external stimuli and how that makes us feel is in charge or is the boss of us. You are the boss of you. Okay? So we have to find ways to keep building self-trust. So one of the biggest things that I think is an amazing builder of trust is establishing small goals. So let's say you have a really hard driving ambition for something, and it's like a huge, big quantum leap you want to make in your life. It's like a huge goal. Okay. So when you sit with that huge goal and you reverse engineer it, meaning you kind of create steps back from the big, colossal, pie in the sky goal, to reverse engineer it is to say, okay, well, what would that step look like right before that big goal? And then what does the step look like before that one, and before that one, and before that one? You kind of reverse engineer it until it feels like something that you could do right now, today. And on the day where you're feeling good, right? Not on the day where you feel like you have to push through. That's old paradigm. We don't do that anymore. We are women. We are built to feel. And we get in a lot of trouble when we don't allow ourselves to feel. And maybe some of you have heard before, like, oh, you're too emotional. It's usually said by someone who doesn't feel anything or show anything. Or you talk too much, or you talk about your experience so much, and you're constantly wearing your heart on your sleeve, and to the point where we're playing like the victim too much with that, and we're like putting ourselves out there as like someone who needs rescuing. That's one thing. But to talk about how you feel, that is not a bad thing. And don't let anyone shame you or guilt you when you want to talk about how you feel, right? We are women. The two hemispheres of our brain, we're all right-brained and left-brained, right? And so when we're more right-brained, we tend to be more creative, more imaginative. We're artsy, okay? Left brain, more analytical, more intellectual. And women's brains are wired so that they are really balanced between the intellectual and the emotional, right? So we get to explore both. And we're coming off of, the heels of this imbalance, where it's been a very masculine paradigm of, dealing with the mental matter for so long and less with the emotional matter. And this is coming up to balance itself out. And it's women who are going to be the ones who lead by example and really showcase how to live in a balanced way between the emotional and the intellectual. It's not that the intellectual is bad. It's not that the emotional is any better. They both need to be expressed. They both need to be showcased in the world. They both lend to us figuring out what this whole life thing is all about and being able to, make some kind of sense of our reality, right? We need it both. So let yourself be emotional, right? And when you're able to, I want to kind of roll this back a little bit. I went off on a tangent. I'm known to do that. Brevity is not my thing. So when we reverse engineer and create these small goals, right? And it's something that we can tackle on the good days. It's important to measure. So here's what happens when we don't measure these or track these small goals. So we can only measure what we track, right? So I write everything down. I'm still at a point in my life where I'm analog. Everything goes in my notebooks, everything. Client notes, all my client sessions, everything that has to do with my work, courses. Not very much goes in my computer. Everything is written down. I'm old school. I just like it that way. And for me, it's more tangible. It's more of an expression rather than something that exists on a laptop where everything could go away. So I write all of my goals down, big or small. And then I write down what kind of traction I've had. What kind of momentum did I build with that? Where did this one goal lead to? And maybe it even led to something else. Maybe I had a goal, but I decided, you know what? This is a better one. This is a juicier one. So I'm going to do that. And I'll often write down why it changed or why it shifted. And I always write down the kind of progress that I've made on my goals. Whatever evolution of that goal, whatever that goes through, I write it down. Because we can only measure what we can track. Don't expect, if you have your goals, your ambitions, your great achievements that you want to have success with. Don't expect to just have it live in the mental matter of your brain and be able to keep track of it in there when you're making progress on it, because you won't. We have this negative bias where, you know, we're still telling a story to ourselves about, you know, who we are, that it's, you know, anything that spans the spectrum of being unworthy or being unwanted or unlovable or unsupported or invisible or, you know, or poor, and any of the stories that we have that build up the narrative or an identity of you, that's the strongest energy in your head, because that's the story your ego is telling you. So these small goals will get lost, okay? Will get lost in the story of that. And they'll be edited out by the brain, because the brain looks for things that corroborate whatever the strongest energy is in your mind. And if the strongest energy in your mind is that someone that doesn't make the cut, someone who doesn't measure up, someone who's incomplete, someone who's always failing at this or that, someone who never has things work out, and that's the story of you, and it's pervasive, and you have thoughts and feelings that back that up every single day, do not expect your brain to also catalog the improvements that you're making on these goals that lend themselves to you being a higher expression of who you are, to you telling a different story about who you are. It'll get lost in the sauce. Your brain will edit it out. So write it down. And when you write it down, you get to measure it because you're tracking it. And you get to look at, you can call it evidence for the ego if you want. You get to look at, ooh, look at these things that are happening. And you get to say, ooh, this is momentum. Ooh, I like this. This feels good. What could be next? You get more excited. You get more curious. You start to neutralize more and more that story of yourself in the brain that's not so wholesome, or even it's not representative of you. It is just a story that you've bought and sold to yourself. It's not true. Remember, your thoughts and your feelings do not express reality. They express your experience of reality, which is entirely different. They don't express the truth of reality. And certainly, if your story is, I'm unworthy, that is not the truth of you. At all. Okay? So when you write it down, you measure it, you track it, you're like, ooh, I'm making momentum. I'm making strides. This is happening. And then you start feeling into this higher expression that starts to take over from the old story. This higher energy takes hold. This higher frequency version of you becomes more and more the actual expression of you. You start linking and matching to more thoughts and feelings that represent this new and more wholesome, much more beneficial story of you. It's not even a story, it's the truth of who you are. Okay? Because the truth of who you are is that you are abundant and you are aligned with a matrix of abundance that keeps on giving. There's no limit, it's boundless. And you're able to tap into any and all of it whenever you want. That's the truth. Okay? You can only measure what you can only track what you measure, or measure what you track. Yes, you can only measure what you track. So write it down. Write it down. And the more you do that and you see the momentum, it builds self-trust. And when you keep the goals small, they're achievable. There are things that you can do every day on the good days. And when you're making these kind of strides, like even when you feel the emotions come up, you feel so supported and nourished because you're showing up for yourself. You're making good on your commitments and promises to yourself. That only builds self-trust. What erodes self-trust is when you make promises and commitments to yourself that you don't keep. This will erode self-trust. It'll break down self-trust quicker than anything else. It's not the promises someone outside of you doesn't keep. Those are contributors. But what erodes self-trust and breaks down self-trust the most is where you don't keep your own promises and commitments to yourself. Your body is listening. Your cells are listening. Your blood is listening. Your DNA is listening. When you say to yourself, I'm going to do this, your body's like, okay, cool. Let's get ready. Let's get ready for change. Okay. And then you don't do anything. You don't do anything. And you don't do anything. And then it gets to be more fodder for how you don't measure up, for how you're a failure, blah, 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 blah. So yes, it's a form of self-sabotage, but it's a way that we don't trust ourselves. And if we've had a habit of not making good on our promises and commitments to self, chances are your self-trust is at an all-time low. So you need to check that. But the good news is you can fix it. You can change that relationship that you're having with yourself. And one of the best and easiest, most accessible ways, create a small goal. A small goal. Today, I'm going to drink 10 glasses of water instead of 7. Something that nourishes you and supports you. Commit to it and do it. Show up for yourself and do it. I don't care how big or small. I would say the smaller the better. And do it consistently over time. If your goal is to lose 30 pounds by January 30th, it's far more self-sabotaging to like clear everything out of your house, you know, set up a regimen where you're feeling so punished or put upon, like I've been so bad, I've been eating so terrible, so I'm going to punish myself. I'm going to restrict everything. I'm going to restrict myself. I'm going to punish myself because I've been bad. I've been eating too many sweets, too much sugar. I haven't been good about exercising, all this stuff. And you create all these goals and goal upon goal upon goal upon goal, and you're putting it upon yourself to be in this place of restriction, but also making yourself do more. Do you feel really supported and nourished by doing that to yourself? Or is another way to start that feels more nourishing and supportive, might that be, you know what, today I'm going to drink 10 glasses of water instead of 7. And then get up the next day and try, okay, yesterday I did really good. I drank 10 glasses of water. Today I'm going to drink 5 of those glasses of water with lemon in it. And then another 5 glasses of water. Maybe 6. We'll see. I think I can do it. Now I know I can do it, right? And you just kind of, you push yourself a little bit, not too much, to just do a little bit more. Instead of making these grandiose plans and goals that are more likely to put you in a self-sabotaging mode because you feel restricted and you feel like you're punishing yourself, you're not going to show up for yourself if you're punishing yourself. It's just not going to fucking happen. It's not a good feeling. Punishment is not nourishment. So how does it maybe feel like this is a reward to me and it takes care of me at the same time? Well, that feels different. I get to love me so much and take care of me and give me good, nourishing stuff. That feels nice. What if you got an extra $20 in your bank account and you're like, you know what I'm going to do for myself this week? I'm going to go and get one of those chair massages. My friend told me about this lady who does these chair massages. She does them, you know, $20 for 20 minutes. And you just sit in the chair. I don't have to take my clothes off or anything. No one's going to touch my feet. I have a thing with people touching my feet. And I can just relax there. I'm allowing myself to do that. That's the kind of self-care that rewards you and nourishes you. When you're doing something to punish yourself so that you can be better tomorrow, it's not going to work. You are not going to show up for yourself. You are not going to trust yourself. You are not going to support yourself. When you were punished as a child, did that help you to trust your parents more? So why would you think that when you punish yourself and restrict yourself, that you're going to want to show up for yourself more? You're not. Okay? So what else do I want to say about that? So when you're on this kind of momentum with small goals, tracking it, measuring it, and saying, yes, I'm building something here, I'm consistently moving in this energy, you tend to want to show up for yourself more and more all the time. Why? Because it feels good. It feels good to be your own lifeline. It feels good to be your own rescue. It feels good and empowering and bold and courageous and brave to be in this place where you're doing things every day to accelerate movement in the direction you want to go. And these are small, achievable goals. You're showing up, you're doing it, you're committing, you're making good on those things, you're ticking the boxes. You tend to want to keep showing up for yourself. And it tends to create an energy like, I want to go a little bit bigger. And you build a consistent kind of acceleration with you. You build a kind of consistent expansiveness with it. You kind of keep pushing boundaries past the last goal, just a little bit more. You know, the elusive idea of the quantum leap is garbage. Because quanta are extremely small. Really small. Bite-sized, microscopic, nanoscopic. My mom quickly realized that punishment didn't work with me. It didn't really work with me either. In fact, it just made me want to rebel and retaliate even more. I just got more sneaky. I just got more devious. It was just under their radar so much more. Anyway. So, sorry, I forgot what I was saying. What was I saying? Can someone help me? So when you're doing that, creating these small goals, and you realize that the quantum leap is garbage, because even in the quantum realm, it is incremental. And what we're really after, we realize that we are quanta, you know, we are expressions of quanta, and everything that we talk about in quantum physics, even quantum physicists don't understand the quantum realm, okay? So just take that to heart. So when it gets, you know, bandied about and overused and overexposed in the spiritual marketplace, I get really upset because people don't really understand what that means. Quantum leaps are incremental. It's just that we don't see all of the moving parts to be able to measure it and say, oh, well, that came first and then that and then that. And some of it happens that it's way beyond our scope or realm to be able to encapsulate that with our mind and our level of knowledge and wisdom and with our brain capacity. What we can work with is incremental growth and evolution over time. And the results are much more rewarding because it feels like we're in constant movement, we're in constant flow. And even the ebb days, if we treat them proactively, contribute to that flow. Yes? And the more you do that, you build self-trust. And so when you think about what new promises you could make to yourself right now, what is a commitment you could make to yourself right now that feels small but achievable? And it's going to take you in the direction that you want to go. It's leading towards the expression that you want to embody. There's always something. There's always several things. And then the key to not only just ticking off that box and doing it, you have to celebrate it. Because that's another way we measure. We measure the achievements and the promises and commitments that we show up and keep for ourselves. When we celebrate it, it's another way of measuring it. Because your body is responding to that. So your body is measuring it. Your mind is measuring it and saying, this is our experience. And you have more of those experiences where you're measuring celebration, you're measuring joy, you're measuring a sense of achievement, you're measuring accomplishment, you're measuring trust, you're measuring being proud of yourself. Then the energy transmutes, it alchemizes towards this higher expression of you. And then more of your cognitive bias goes to noticing this version of you. It only creates a resonant match for all these things coming in that were abundant, that were always there, that were veiled to you before because you had a different story, a different resonance, a different frequency of you. Does this land with you guys? So if you're feeling really good by everything that I'm saying here, and this has made sense, this has landed with you, and you're like, man, what if I had this kind of energy like twice a month? What if I had this kind of energy to help me deal with the ebb going on in my life in a month? and the energy to help me work with those days where I want to build momentum, on those days where I'm really feeling flow. What if I had this kind of teaching and this energy twice a month for the next 6 months? How unstoppable would that make me? How much more courageous and proud of myself and available for maybe, making more bold and expansive goals for myself. How good would that feel? I pushed myself away from my health and realized I was making empty promises and then punishing myself. Yeah. We get into a pretty ugly routine with that sometimes. Stopping that nonsense. Good for you, Sarah. I know it wasn't working for me. Of course it doesn't work for you. I wrote on my mirror with dry erase marker that I love my body at any weight, right? You gotta love yourself now. Not tomorrow, because that doesn't exist. Or even the version of you that, wore a bikini 20 years ago. That version of you doesn't exist either. Not really. But I wasn't believing it. That's changed. I had to voice it out loud to realize what I was feeling, and bam, lost 4 pounds in a few days. That's awesome, Sarah. I'm so glad to hear that. Tiziana says, this is so good. Thank you. I'm glad. I'm really glad. So, with all this great information, with everything that I'm sharing here, I want you to really take inventory right now, right here. How do you feel? How do you feel coming into a place of resonating with you, what you feel is the truth of what I'm sharing? And maybe you don't feel all this is truth, and maybe you're willing to just allow that it could be truth, even if you're not resonating with it right now. How does that feel when you just put your hand on your heart and you close your eyes and you're sitting with the energy of this talk? How does it make you feel? Can you feel into what's possible for you? Can you feel that you're so much more than what the perceived limits that you've set for yourself, by yourself? Can you even grasp that you are so much more than the limits of you? Because the limits of you are your imposed limits. The universe isn't imposing any limits on you. The world isn't imposing any limits on you. You could adopt the idea that the world is going to shit, and you can believe that, and you can live your life by it, and you can feel hopeless, and you can feel blown about like a leaf on the wind because of it, or you can say, hey, you know what? The world is changing. I'm changing. Everything that I've known to be as reality is changing. You know what? But I'm going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. And just because it's changing, maybe that means that what I've known as my life or my reality so far, that gets to change. And I get to be emboldened by this accelerated change that's happening to maybe work with these energies instead of against them. And to kind of adopt this momentum and flow and say, you know what? There's new potentials as this old stuff collapses and there's this release happening in the collective, in the world, on the planet. Then doesn't that also, just like I'm creating this for myself, doesn't that also open up room for new potentials, new expressions in the world? What if I really dug into some of that energy and realized what's possible for me? Maybe it could be better than something I've imagined before. Maybe it could be better than something that I've even dared to think about before. It feels hopeful, Eleanor says. There's so much possibility. Yes. So I want to give you an opportunity to work with me for 6 months. Not only do I want to give you an opportunity to work with me for 6 months, I'm going to give you an incredible opportunity to do this for under $100 every month. So my coaching sessions go for $349 for 45 minutes for one-on-one work. I'm offering an opportunity to work with me twice a month in a group called Momentum of Flow. And we start December 1st. Our first call, I believe, is going to be on the 2nd, but I'll have to check on that. And it's only $88 a month. We have 2 calls a month. One is the ebb call. The ebb call addresses what we're talking about here with the emotional tension and how to turn that into creative tension, how to sit with the feels. I get to work with you in a very customizable space, and you get to ask me questions about what's going on. This is hot seat style coaching. This is an opportunity for you to work on, this is going on in my life, this ebb. This ebb is something that is fuel for my flow. And I want to work with that. I want to alchemize that. So that's what we do on the ebb call days. That is once a month. The second call of the month is the flow call. We look at what's working. So on the ebb day, we look at what's not working out. On the flow day, we look at what is working out. What are you tracking? What are you measuring? Let's build on that. How do we build on that? How do we extrapolate that? How do we incrementally build this out? How do we take the creative tension that we alchemize from the emotional tension and turn that into more flow, more momentum? This is going to be an absolutely amazing opportunity, and I hope that you'll join me. It does feel incredible, and I'm so excited to offer this to you. So I'm going to put the details in the comments here. This is going to be an $88 a month opportunity for those who lock in this membership before the 22nd of this month. After the 22nd of November, it will go up to $99 a month, which is still incredible for 2 calls with me every month. And we will go for 6 months. So we go from December 1st to May 31st of 2023. So I wanted to offer something that was not going to break the bank, but be of high service, high value, and be able to, create real shifts, real movement, so that we go into 2023 with some momentum already. We hit the ground running. You feel confident. You feel excited. All right? This is your opportunity. This is going to be so incredible, and I'm so, so, so excited about it. Those of you who are in Visionaries, Luminaries, and Divine Disruptors, this is a special opportunity for you because your first month is only $44, because this actually takes the place of our December month, okay? And if you decide that you want to sign up and keep going, you can do that and lock in your $88 a month, and that will be what you pay for January through May. If you sign up for right now, so it's open right now, the link is open right now, so today is the 7th. Up until the 22nd, you lock in the price of $88 a month. If you sign up for this after the 22nd, or I should say, if you sign up after the 22nd of this month, yes, it is $99 a month, and you'll lock in that price for every month. I highly recommend getting in here. This is going to be incredible. I am so excited. I can't even begin to tell you. I was so excited about this call today because I was like, I just want to tell him that right now. So this is your opportunity to work together in this space, and it's going to be such a breath of fresh air. You're going to love it. So I hope you'll join us. So the information will be down below. Your link is down below. Come and play. Come and join us. Lots of love and peace. Bye-bye.